talked about. So we just lived through it wasn't filmed, unfortunately, for everyone out there, because it would be a great comedy. But we feel like it was a horror movie trying to set everything back up to do this first podcast, the first one that we've done, in over a year. That was a horror. It was a horror movie for us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad you told me that boomers are considered what? You're anybody over 30 is technically a boomer, because I'm always feeling like, God, man, I don't have.
According to I think the new slang for
the new slang, God. So I've been a boomer for a lot longer than I thought I had. Holy crap!
So it's like there's two, I guess, classes of people, classifications of people, right? Those under under 30, and then boomer.
And then boomer, okay. Well, I always forget, you've got your Gen X, Gen Y, what millennials.
And then Gen Z.
Gen Z.
For the younger than millennial. So anybody, the way I've heard it, if 9/11 is history to you, meaning that you didn't go through it,
then you're
Generation Z. Gen Z.
If you don't remember
9/11.
Watching it live on television.
If 9/11 is history to you,
okay,
it's the cutoff. So if you're born, after 2001, then you're Gen Z.
Gen Z. I know. I'm Gen Caveman. Gen Neanderthal. Is that that's a term, right? I've still got a rotary phone. It's right over there. It's right on the other side. There's your rotary phone right over there. Doesn't work. But.
Well, we had to watch the same video for getting set up again, right? Like the original video that we watched.
Right, to initially start this.
So it's only fitting that on the Film Nobs 2.0 OMG reboot that we would have to watch the same video again.
It's sad. That's what it's sad. Oh.
It didn't take us half a day this time.
It took a third of the day. Well, it did. What? I guess it just took about an hour, right? Maybe a little over an hour. Rewind that. I didn't catch that. Well, why isn't this working? I did what it said.
Well, remember, even in the video though, the
well, true.
Person didn't know exactly what they were doing 100%, so they had to fiddle with it.
So how can we be expected, right? If he didn't know what,
because we did the same things he did, and then that turned out to be an error on his part that we repeated. So we had to keep watching to find out his solution.
But hold on, remember, this would have been solved a lot more quickly had we just played it. Remember, and then he finally said, "Oh wait, no, that's
right.
Let's do it." I forgot this step. If we'd have just,
but that's not the Film Knob way.
Well, remember, we had seen that video before. We just didn't remember. If we had remembered that he...
But in all fairness, it's been, over a year, maybe over a year and a half since we last met to do a podcast.
Right. It wasn't our fault at all.
We are boomers after all.
Or cavemen. So, I know... We've mentioned, even though we're going to talk about horror a little bit today, I think, we've mentioned before that you're not exactly the horror movie guy, right?
Right.
And so, if you would remind me, so it's been a while since we've talked about this. Why aren't you the movie? What about horror movies has kept you from watching as many as some of the other genres of films?
It might depend on the type of horror movie, which will be a discussion that we'll have later on, breaking down the different types of horror movies.
Right, of which there are, numerous.
Numerous. And depending on, the source. So we'll have to be the definitive source on,
well, of course,
selling the argument how many classifications there are.
How many genres are there really?
I tend to I have a very vivid imagination. So whenever I see something, especially if it's disturbing, it hangs on me for a long time. I replay it.
Well, this last year must have been an absolute nightmare for. I mean, it's been a nightmare for everybody in a way, but boy, wow, it's going to be tough on you over the next few years. So I mean, you feel like it's like in a loop in your head.
Yeah,
if you see something.
Like if I identify with a character, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be the main character, but if I identify with a character and something gruesome happens to them, I remember it. And I kind of empathize with them, maybe even feel it. You know, not that I'm going through it, not that I'm experiencing it, but that it's like somebody I know going through it. So I mean, it's really affecting then. Yeah, it can be
too much. So I mean, that one of the things about movies is you want a lot of them to affect you, right? You want to feel something, but not, I guess. Not in a horrible sense, not in a horrifying sense.
Right. Not I won't say debilitating, but you know, if it wakes you up at night, or you can't quite see because my brain doesn't shut off. You know.
Well, do you have bad dreams? I mean, let's say you watch an exceedingly
yes,
scary movie.
I have.
Will you have nightmares about that very thing, or?
Well, I'll tell you. Now I know we're film knobs and not video game knobs, but when the original Halo came out on the original Xbox, a buddy and I stayed up all night playing it. We got to a scene or part in the movie, part in the game,
right,
that was horrifying, and it was awesome and horrifying at the same time. And when I went to bed that night, I didn't make the separation of stopping playing the game. I kept playing the game
right
all night. In my sleep,
right? You were still sitting there staring at the screen, huh? Well, I can,
and still experiencing the overwhelming, because it was all encompassing the baddies, right? The bad guys, the bad creatures, whatever. It was like a horror movie. It was kept flooding in round after round, and you know, kind of like Aliens.
Oh, well, yeah. So does that happen a lot then when you watch horror movies, or was that like?
No, it can, depending on how disturbing or how involved I am, you know, with whatever.
With what? Yeah. How effective? Maybe. I guess maybe. Hold on though. This could be a way for us to figure out what the really good horror movies are, because you know, if they make you feel for a character the way they should, and then they off them. You know, and it bothers you so much. Well, then we'll know. Well, they did their job, because Rick was really Rick had nightmares for 4 weeks about.
Yeah, I'll be the litmus test.
Well, I understand the dream thing. Now this happened to me a long time ago. This has not been recent, but like when I was. Well, let's see here. I'm trying to remember when the movie The Amityville Horror came out. I think it was somewhere around 1979, maybe 80, somewhere around there. So I was 12 or 13 years old, and it wasn't the movie. So it was actually a year or two before that. So I was either 11 or 12 years old, something like that, when I read Jay Anson's book, The Amityville Horror, right? And of course, being that young, and they still didn't really know that it was completely fabricated, you know. A smart person would have figured it out, and I'm sure many were. But at 12 years old, I was like, oh, this is based on a true story. It happened. And so I remember when I finished that book, one night I was laying in bed, and I could hear the hangers in my closet rattling, you know, I could hear them as plain as I hear you across the table from me right now. And I was mortified, you know, and, so, and I'm not exaggerating here, for at least a year, I slept on the side of my bed that was furthest away from that closet door. So I could, you know, I'd have a head start when whatever the hell, the evil thing that was going to, you know, that was rattling those hangers came out of there. I was going to make it to the stairs way before it got me. So yeah, it can be pretty. Again, that was the book version of it, but
So your theater of the mind
exactly
got you even worse, maybe than what the movie would have.
right, and that's probably why a lot of times reading books is certainly it takes longer, it's a more immersive thing, but yeah, your mind can generate a whole lot more than your eyes can, and that I think that's why maybe. To me, at least personally, a lot of movies that leave things to the imagination, they don't show you everything. They kind of, wait a minute, did I see that? Or see that in the background? Those are the things that bothered me more than out and out gore. Because I'm always thinking, when I watch something gory or bloody, I think mostly I'm thinking, how did they create that effect, or that how did they do that?
Because obviously they're not, like in a Hostel movie, right? They're not actually executing real people.
Let's hope not. No.
Hopefully.
I felt kind of like I had been executed watching a Hostel movie. Just like, oh my gosh, ugh.
But there, I guess there's an art to horror.
Well, sure, there's an art to horror, and there's an art to, I guess to making gory scenes. But I'm not, that's not something that, that's not something that scares me. As far as, to me, that's just more kind of, ooh, that was cool. How did they do that? So what scared you as a kid? When, like I said, I was pretty young when that happened. Was there anything? Did you have any kind of? I'm trying to, I'm coming at it from a psychological angle. So was there? Do you think there was a trigger for why you are so bothered by how, why they affect you so much? Did something happen when you were younger? Was there a movie, because I know I'm asking this, my wife's brother, I believe this is what happened. She said that somehow he kind of coerced her. I don't know if he basically sat on her and forced her to watch, anyway, part of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and she said she was scared, silly, and she didn't watch when we were first married. She wouldn't hardly watch any horror show. Now, of course, now I've trained her well. She's she loves Walking Dead, and we just got through watching Midnight Mass, which we both really enjoyed. So anyway, was there some kind of traumatic movie event, a horror film event when you were younger?
The earliest thing I can remember, it wasn't even movie related, but remember, I don't know if they did this when you were growing up, but the whole Bloody Mary, saying Bloody Mary 3 times in front of a mirror. In the bathroom mirror with the lights off, and
right,
if you say it 3 times, kind of like Beetlejuice, right? She's supposed to appear,
right? And Candyman,
yeah, right. So I was at a friend's house, and we were, it was a dare, right? And I got up to 2, but I never had the courage to muster up 3, just in case, just in case it was true. Because if it was true, I didn't want to die, right?
Well, no.
So I never made it to 3. But just the idea that what if it was real? What if it came true? And what if she appeared? Not even knowing who, the reference to Bloody Mary, right? Who Bloody Mary was, I guess it was.
You weren't going to test the waters.
No.
So that makes me think again. I know you've watched some horror. I mean, it's not like you haven't. Have you ever seen Candyman, the original, or the?
A friend and I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
And it got to a certain part, like I guess it was early on, and he and I were both so disturbed by it that we left.
Now, how old would you have been? I'm trying to think of when Candyman came out. About how old were you?
I was an adult.
You were grown. You were grown up. I mean, you're out.
Yeah, we looked at each other and like shook our heads and like, no.
And you went off to watch a Disney movie
or you know, cuddled with a puppy or something, you know.
Well, I thought, the reason I thought you told me a while back, and of course, as we've already proven, my memory's not as sharp as it used to be. But I thought you told me that there was something that you saw. Maybe it was just from that when you were younger that like you were, I thought I remember you telling me one time that you were scared to walk, you were scared to walk down your street. It was something you'd seen. I thought it was movie wise that you were, I know that you grew up partly on military bases, right?
Yeah.
And that,
and so the base had a movie theater.
Yeah.
And so we caught movies, sometime after, I guess they made the rounds of the premiere, primary releases. And, so one example I can tell you is that there was a poster of the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Right.
So Johnny Depp,
I can remember that.
So you know that poster.
Right, yeah.
Johnny Depp is looking into the mirror, and then in the mirror there's a transformation, and I guess he's transforming into Freddy Krueger.
Right.
And it was disturbing. And every time I walked by it, because we went to the movies quite a bit, every time we walked by it, it stuck with me. It's like it was looking at me. It's like one of those paintings in the wall where the eyes move.
No matter where you go. Yeah.
It's like they were looking at me.
You.
Yeah. And that stuck with me for a while. It freaked me out. It was cool. I thought it was a cool poster, but at the same time, it also terrified me.
Right.
So I don't know if I thought at that age, I was probably, 8 years old maybe, if it's going to come alive. And, maybe it was related to the whole Bloody Mary thing where I thought maybe that
So it had been around the same,
it could have been.
Wow, yeah. So did the same thing, I'm trying to think back when I was a kid. Did the same thing. I know that, I know better now when a horror movie tells me I am, to the point where I pretty much know this is a true story. Kind of like, well, they do in Fargo. They tell, this is a true story, and of course it's not. That I know those aren't true. But I'm trying to think, what scared you as a kid? Do those same things still scare you now? Or
I guess everybody has a sixth sense about things.
Yeah.
So if they go into an area and something's kind of makes their skin crawl, or the hair stands up on their arm, like before a lightning strike or something.
All right.
Not to go any further. So I've had experiences in my life. It's like going in, walking in a direction or whatever, and then something almost like a spidey sense, right? Kind of tingles, and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to go this way.
I think I wish I would have had that sense a couple places I've walked to in my later years. But I mean, when I was a kid, and I think we've all experienced this, right? Where, don't walk by that, don't walk by that house. That's that's where old man Johnson lives, and rumor is he's killed a couple of kids, Of course, why is he still there, not in jail? But you stay away from places like that, when you're younger. But you kind of,
have you ever had the feeling that somebody was like watching you, like, and that they were approaching you from behind?
Yeah.
And you turn around and there's nobody there, but you still feel kind of creeped out.
There's something like and you hear, I think maybe this is why, now that I think about it, but people say they feel cold, like a cold air comes, from behind them. And I think when you get that feeling, you know, you get goosebumps, you know, and you turn around. I think it makes you kind of feel, when you get goosebumps, it kind of makes you feel cold. But I haven't had that in a, you know, I don't know. I haven't had that in a long time. Do you still?
It's been a while. I think the movie that you're talking about that I mentioned earlier was, I hate to admit it, Saturday the 14th.
Saturday. What about Saturday the 14th? Other than it's, I mean, for me, that movie was terrifying. It was just something bad. It was a really horrible.
If I remember right, it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but somebody transformed into a monster or something, and I don't know, something about it creeped me out. And it wasn't like the Addams Family creepy, where, you know, kind of funny creepy, like creepy.
It just for some reason hit you wrong.
Yeah. And I think walking home after watching it with a friend, it was at night in the fall. I think that's where I had the first kind of, hey, there might be somebody behind me chasing me. All right. So I better get home pretty quick. And I kept, you know, looking over my shoulder, make sure there's nobody there. But it was just that kind of oppressive fear that something might get me.
And did you run? You ran?
I'm pretty sure I did. Or picked up the pace, you know, gradually getting closer to home. And so how do you think horror has changed over time? Like, as far as what was scary in the previous generation, you know, to any current generation may not be scary.
Yeah, well, yeah.
All the way up
through, you know, there are different cycles. And you think back to, it's like a kid growing up. Like I said, you know, when I was a kid, things scared me that, you know, aren't going to scare me now. And kind of as society, we've gotten jaded. You get jaded on certain things. You know, we've seen this time and time again, so we're not scared of it anymore, you know. And because of that, through the years, we've had to ramp, you know, things get more explicit. They get, you know, bloodier. People thinking, well, we're kind of immune to this kind of horror. And but now I don't know how much further, you know, we can go with, you know, what is the
flame on max. I'ma keep it going till there ain't nothing left. Going till there ain't nothing. Keep the flame on max. I'ma keep it going till there ain't nothing left. Going till there ain't nothing. Keep the flame on max. I'ma keep it going till there ain't nothing left. Going till there ain't nothing. Keep the flame on max. I'ma keep it going till there ain't nothing left. Going till there ain't nothing. Keep the flame on. Gotta 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 keep the flame on. Keep the flame on.
Holographic horror, maybe.
Well, at the same time, they're talking about maybe genres, you know, running through cycles and genres of things, and having to move on. One thing that, if you still tell a good story, you know, about characters you care about, if you are invested in that character on screen, and you put that character in some kind of peril, you're going to be affected. It's going to scare you. You're going to feel, like you were talking about, feeling empathy. You know, you feel a strong empathy towards victims. If movies are good at that, I think it doesn't really matter what, you know, what type of horror movie it is. It'll still be effective if you can. And again, that's kind of been a problem. We've gotten away from a lot of filmmakers now, and for a while now, have thought, well, the more extreme, you know, we get, the gorier it gets, the bloodier, then that will satisfy us. And I guess it does to some people, but it certainly doesn't to others. You know, it just becomes, you know, kind of mundane. It's like, I've seen I've seen people get ripped up. I don't care anything about that. Then you just start wondering how did they do that effect?
Right.
Without really being scared. You get scared, or I do certainly, because I don't want something to happen to that character,
Well, to your point, now I haven't seen the Halloween trilogy reboot, obviously, but if I'm not mistaken, there's a scene where somebody's brain literally is squished out of their head, right?
I want to say, yeah. And here's the thing, I wouldn't have remembered unless you, and I still am kind of vague about it, but I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I saw the Bruce Willis remake of Death Wish.
You did?
Yeah. And
I didn't.
There's a scene where a similar thing happens, and the car falls on a guy and, lands on his head, squishes it, out the brain. I'm like, they just did that because they can.
And you don't have to. Guess what? You don't even, when you do a lot of things like that. Oh, we don't have to worry about the plot so much or dialogue. Right. We'll just, and people will go, ooh, right,
right.
Yeah.
So it was almost like, from a technology standpoint, it's like we've reached a point where, hey, we can do that now. So it's new. So let's do that trick.
But it's not really anymore, right? I mean. Extreme gore has been around a while now, I guess we can do it more convincingly. I don't know. Or I don't know, some of it gets done with CG, like we've been talking about CG work. That's actually, to me, less convincing,
It can be. It can be.
So, in some cases. So, that's been a dead end for a while now for me.
So what do you think the next evolution should be? To come back around to like practical effects?
I don't know. I'm trying to, think of effective horror movies, good horror movies in the last few years. The Quiet Place movies, both of them come to mind. Those are, and again, they're good not because of any particular, and I think the effects are good. I think I remember you not being entirely convinced, maybe. Just
from the trailer. I haven't had a chance to see them, but
okay.
I've seen the trailer for the second one and seeing what the whatever creature looked like. I'm like, they're scared of that. Because it's like CG, and I'm like, it stands out as CG.
Really? See, and maybe that's because the movies are effective those two movies are effective at telling their story with good actors when you actually see the movies, because I actually thought the effects were pretty good throughout them. And I was invested in those characters in the movie. So those movies were good, I thought. I did worry about, oh my God, are they going to make it through this? But it's not reinventing. Here's where it did kind of reinvent the wheel to some degree, by doing it where, virtually, most of the movie is done in silence. So no one's saying anything,
right.
At least. I can remember when I saw it in the theater for the first time in years, it was so great because everyone was, you could tell, consciously trying to watch, be quiet, like if they're eating their popcorn. They were...
They had that co experience together.
Exactly.
Right?
It was the communal, which is, when movies are done right, you've got to see them. There's some movies that just have to be seen in a theater. We can go into, this debate right now about, how to watch movies now, but some movies just demand to be seen in a theater. And this is one of them, because you do get that communal effect, and people, I could hear a couple of rows back, someone very quietly trying to, I could tell they were unwrapping a piece of candy or something, and of course it works out backward for them, works out the wrong way, because when you're slow about it, you're trying to be quiet, you're actually just dragging the whole sound experience out.
Nails on a chalkboard.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like, oh, just go in, do it, man, do it.
pull that Band-Aid off.
Right, but you could tell everybody in the theater was into it. They were trying to be as quiet as possible, and as you know, and probably most people know, and that's a tough thing to do in theaters now is to keep everybody quiet when they need to be quiet.
So, have you gone back to watch horror movies that you've seen, prior? And in doing so, have they lived up or
right? They still give me that same. Because after you see something, right? Certainly the suspense factor, kind of in your head what's. But to answer your question, the good ones, the ones that I like, I can still go back, and regardless of knowing kind of how it ends, I still, if they're done effectively, especially if they're well photographed, if, it's kind of artfully done. I know that one of my favorite horror movies is Curse of the Demon, made back in, I think it was like 1956, and it's a black and white movie, kind of deals with satanic worship and this demon that's may or may not be summoned back. You don't really know, at least on first watch, whether are people imagining this and causing their own demise, or is this something tangible and real? And it's shot. There's a couple of amazing shots, and it's black and white. But they're so creepy. Like right now, even talking about it, I'm getting little goosebumps on my arms because it's creepy. And it works time after time. That's a movie I go back to.
So it's held up.
It's held up to me. Yeah, I think that's kind of, to me, Curse of the Demon is maybe the horror movie I would most recommend to people that... I don't know that a lot of people have seen Curse of the Demon, actually, and I think if they watch it, they'll go, "Wait, this is made in '56, and this is a little creepy." And I know that I also went back and watched fairly recently the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that one holds up. That movie bothers me, and what's weird about it is. I talked earlier about things you don't see, actually in your mind, in your mind, you can make up much more terrible things than you actually see. And I know most people that have watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they will swear that they, see all of this gore and blood and, and I did too. Originally, when I first saw it, I was like, man, that was gory. And when I rewatched it, I was like, there's not much gore in that movie, especially by today's standards. And it works. You think there is because it's so well made, so well directed that you think you see more than you actually see. I know I read one time that the director, Tobe Hooper, actually tried to cut some bloodier scenes out or tone them down because he wanted a PG rating. And the MPAA slapped an X on it originally, and I think he did maybe cut a little bit more to where they were able to get an R rating out of it.
I guess with horror movies, part of the name of the game is you gotta have the perfect title, right?
It helps. So,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's like the most perfect title of a horror movie ever. Because he couldn't insert any other state name in there, like Florida Chainsaw Massacre.
You're right. Yeah,
New Hampshire Chainsaw Massacre. It doesn't work, and any other tool wouldn't work.
Now I'm trying to think, and this is going to show where I in part, of course, very loosely, the original idea was, I think, taken from the Ed Gein story, which I want to say Psycho also kind of took some liberties from. And I don't know if that happened in Texas. They just, did it happen in Texas? And so they just got lucky. Oh, well, we'll just call it the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. just the chainsaw. The Chainsaw Massacre wouldn't work, right? It just can't be the chainsaw. You have to put in Texas.
Yeah, and you can't use a hammer. It couldn't be the Texas Hammer Massacre.
Hammer Massacre. Well, a chainsaw is a very. Have you ever used a chainsaw?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's an immediate reaction to.
It is just the sound.
It's raw power.
It is raw power, and it can do horrific damage in a very short amount of time.
I mean, if it could cut limbs off of trees,
well, definitely cut your limbs off
pretty quick. And effective.
I know. I think
even a dull one.
Well, that's even worse. A dull one's even worse because it's like a knife. I would rather be cut with a sharp knife than I would a dull knife. Mm-hmm. I think one of the scariest scenes in a movie I've ever seen is the first time we see Leatherface in that movie, and it's so quick, it's just bam, and then he's gone, in a hurry. It's just shocking. That may actually be the scariest moment I can think of that I've ever seen in a movie.
I see you making me actually want to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, I would, I would watch that movie again just to, it's something. Just to see why it works, how it works so well. And there's just a whole bunch of neat stories about it too. Actually the narration you hear, at the beginning is, and I didn't know this at first, was actually John Larroquette, the guy who, the actor who won like 4 Emmys in a row playing, the lawyer in Night Court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was, and I don't know if this is true. Okay, so I'm stating this. There were stories that, it was so low budget they actually that they paid him. I think he worked for a day. Just doing the voiceover. They paid him in weed. Is one I don't know if I don't know if that's just one of those great Hollywood legend stories or what, but
I wouldn't be surprised if it was true.
It was 1973, 4, somewhere around there. So, I tell you what, if you want to take that dive, if you want to take that deep dive into a horror movie, I will be more than happy to, I will lead you through it. We can have the light. We'll keep the lights on. I'll make sure the cats, are put up. They won't jump on you at the wrong time.
Baby steps, right?
Babies. Well,
it's like wading into the pool, kiddie pool.
Well, that movie, to me, you're jumping in the deep end with that one. But and like I say though, it's not that gory. If gore is what bothers you, it's really not. But it's so well executed that you'll swear that you've seen.
So, not having seen, is there a lot of fast edits? Like implying violence.
There's just like I said. There's fast moving things happen quickly. I don't know. I can't remember if the editing itself now. Well, editing certainly can make something a lot scarier, than it is. Good, thoughtful editing, but I don't know. I can't remember. We'll have to watch it again.
It's like discovering an old friend, right? Again.
Exactly. And another thing about that movie, it's got one of the greatest endings of any movie I've seen. And it's very much debated on, and I won't say exactly what it is, but it's debated upon what the meaning of the last shot, really is. And you would have to see it without me. I'm not going to. I hate spoilers.
Right.
So you just have to see it. I've got it right down here. When we end this episode, we'll go right down there. I think it may actually storm a little bit tonight. And actually, it's my understanding that the house that they used for that, it got moved. It's somewhere around Austin, down in Texas, and it's used as I think it's a restaurant now.
Huh.
And at one point, I thought that they actually maybe sold memorabilia like at the upstairs of the house, and you could eat downstairs. I've never done that. I was actually out. I should be ashamed because I had a brief stay in Austin one time, and I think it may have even been that when I was there. So I should have went out and checked that out.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that might have traumatized me.
I wonder what the menu dishes would be named.
Well, you would have look if you're going to go to all the trouble of buying and renovating that house to make it a restaurant, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Home. You had better have a clever.
Like if you have steak, would it be called Leatherface?
Right. Or yeah, it's the Leatherface special. Oh, man. Well, just looking at the clock up there, it looks like a lot of people in the horror movies that we've been talking about, we're running out of time, my friend. Looks like we may need to wrap this one up. Have you got any last thoughts on what we've been talking about?
Well, it does feel good to be back in Knob headquarters.
Oh, right. It certainly does.
Back in the swing of things, kicking off the 2.0 OMG reboot that we've been touting on social media.
Absolutely.
So I guess we're going to continue the horror theme throughout the month since we are in.
Why not?
The month of Halloween, right?
And I feel like I kind of feel reinvigorated, not only because we're back in our home, but that you open the door a little bit to maybe watching some horror movies, including the Granddaddy, the biggie. So I'm excited that this month could bring great things, great horrible, horrific things,
as October should.
Exactly.
All right, Knobsters, if you want to check us out on social media, we're everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and we just started a TikTok account, Instagram. And catch the podcast on all the usual channels: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Libsyn. You can go back out and check out the retro re-releases if you want. And we got some other exciting stuff coming out. Go check out the promos to find out more of what we're scheming in the coming, weeks, months.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited about this. I'm glad to be back in the saddle again. Things are returning to normal.
Yes, and the world needs more return to normalcy after the cluster it's been.
Exactly. It's good. It's good to be back. All right, so I guess that's it. Then until next time, everybody, take care.